Well, good morning, Seacrest friends. How are you? It's Rabbi Leah here. I am so excited to be coming to you to speak to all my wonderful friends in the Katzen residence and in the Goldberg Healthcare Center. And I've been excited and waiting to do this program for you because we have a very special holiday coming up next week. And it starts on Thursday night and it is on Friday and Saturday. And we're going to talk all about it this morning. But the first thing I want to do is sing. So this is called Singin' Schmooze. So we're going to sing first. And I don't know if you could see behind me this beautiful burgundy wall hanging. It was made for me in Israel at a very, very special place called Yad L'Kashish. And Yad L'Kashish means hand to the elderly. And this is an amazing, amazing workshop in Jerusalem that is run by, and all the people who work there are ages 65, 70 to 100 and older. And they make the most gorgeous handmade items. Oops, not that one that I almost broke. But this says, Moda ani lefanecha, which means I am grateful before you. And usually this hangs in my office at Seacrest, but I brought it home with me so that when I do these programs for all of you, I have some pretty things hanging in my home. Not that I don't have other pretty things hanging in my home, but this is kind of special to me because of where it was made. And during my year in Israel, when I lived there for my first year of rabbinical school, I actually did a 1-year internship. I did my community program. All of us had to work at a different place in order to get credits for our community service. And I worked there for a year, and I did sewing and knitting and all different kinds of things with these amazing elderly folks in their workshop. So I want to sing Modeh Ani Lefanecha. If you are a male, you sing Modeh, and if you are a female, you sing Moda. So we're going to sing that, and it means I'm grateful before you. It's one of the first prayers we say every morning when we first open our eyes and we realize we're still alive, and we're going to be upright, and we're going to be happy. Now, I'm just going to warn you that outside of my home, which is where this is coming from, I have about a half a dozen little girls on skateboards and scooters, and they are very loud when they play. And sometimes when they come tearing down the hill by my house, they like to scream. And even though I've told them that I am on the computer and doing work for the people that I work for, they don't seem to understand the concept of not screaming. When they scream, sometimes my little dogs bark. So you're just going to have to live with it. It's become the new normal for me. The dogs bark, the little girls scream, but I'm going to sing. And so we're going to sing Moda Ani Lefanecha, or Modeh if you're a man. And we're going to thank God for letting us wake up this morning again. Moda Ani Lefanecha, Melech Chai V'Kayam, שהחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה, בחמלה, רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך. Now we're going to clap. Moda ani lefanecha, Melech Chai V'Kayam, שהחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה, בחמלה, emunatecha. Rabba emunatecha. Rabba emunatecha. And basically what we're saying is, thank you, God, for giving me my soul back, for letting me wake up this morning, for allowing me to be upright, for allowing me to enjoy another day on this beautiful, beautiful planet, even though maybe I'm in my room more than I want to be, maybe I'm in my building more than I want to be, and maybe if I haven't seen my family, my friends for a little while, we're still going to celebrate the fact that we are alive. Okay, so what is the holiday that is coming up? What is the holiday that is right on the horizon for us? Just 10 days away, actually 9 days away. 9 days away. It is Shavuot. Shavuot. Some of you pronounce this Shavuos, which is kind of the Yiddish expression, or Shavuot. So, I want to talk about this very, very wonderful holiday and answer hopefully a lot of your questions. And if you have questions that I don't answer while I'm doing Sing and Schmooze with you today, then I'm going to ask Katie to jot them down and to email them to me, and I will be happy to answer them. And I promise you, I won't make up the answer. I'll either get you the right answer, or I'll tell you that I can't find it, or I don't know, but I won't make it up. How does that sound? Good? Okay. If you see the light changing a little bit while you're watching me on your TV, it's not your TV. It is just that it's morning and the sun is changing its place in the sky. Sometimes it gets a little brighter. Sometimes it gets a little dimmer, but we're going to get through this. All right. So Shavuot, Shavuos. It is also known by other names. The word in Hebrew, Shavuah, means week. And so when I wish you all on Saturday night, when Shabbat is over, a Shavua Tov, that means have a good week. The word Shavuot means weeks, plural, with an S on the end. And we call it the Feast of Weeks. In the Greek, it's known as Pentecost, or in the Christian tradition as Pentecost. It is a Jewish holiday, obviously. Takes place on the 6th day of the Hebrew month of Sivan. So last month, Nisan, during which we had Pesach, actually 2 months ago, and then we had the month of Iyar, and now we're moving shortly into the month of Sivan. That is the 3rd month of the Hebrew calendar. And so even though some of you think that the new year starts in the fall at Rosh Hashanah, it actually starts with the first month of Nisan, which is Pesach. So we had Passover, and then we move into Shavuot. And by the way, this is the 3rd and final of the festivals that we will observe before Rosh Hashanah. Okay? And then, of course, after Rosh Hashanah, we have Sukkot. And God willing, we'll be able to be in a sukkah this year together to celebrate. So let me tell you a little bit about Shavuot. Shavuot, or Shavuos, as some people say in the Yiddish, falls between usually May 15th and June 14th. Depends on the Hebrew year, not on the English dates. This year it happens to fall on the evening of May 28th. Let me make absolutely sure that I'm not giving you the wrong date, because sometimes these days are starting to run together for all of us. So May 28th, yes, Thursday night of next week. I'll be doing blessings that night. And then the first day of Shavuot is Friday the 29th. The second day is Saturday the 30th. And we will have services on Friday and on Saturday. but I'll get to that later. So the holiday, as I mentioned, is one of 3 pilgrimage festivals. And what does that mean, a pilgrimage festival? Well, a pilgrimage is a journey that is taken from one place to another place, usually not that close together. And so in ancient Israel, 3 times a year, the Israelites would take a pilgrimage where they would walk, because they didn't have an SUV or a moped or anything like that. They would walk from wherever they lived in the land of Israel all the way to Jerusalem. And for some of them, that could take days. So these pilgrimage festivals fall 3 times a year, and each one of them is associated with a different agricultural time of year and a different harvest. So let's think about them, okay? Sukkot, that one's in the fall, right? And we build the sukkah and we celebrate the fall harvest. Then comes Pesach, and we celebrate Pesach in the spring, and that it has something that we just are going through right now, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. And then we get to Shavuot, and that's usually towards the end of May, beginning of June, and that represents the summer harvest, or the beginning of the summer harvest. Now, why are all these harvests so important? Why do we have these pilgrimage festivals? What meaning do they have? Well, in ancient Israel, they were very, very, very important, because the Israelites were what we call an agrarian society. And what that means is that they relied on agriculture for their well-being. You know, they didn't go to Albertsons or Vons or Sprouts or somewhere else to get their groceries. They grew everything that they had. And so these harvest festivals were extremely important for them, because they symbolized God's plenty and the fact that their crops were coming in well, they were going to have enough to eat. You know, you grew in the spring what you were going to harvest in the summer, and then you grew in the summer what you were going to harvest in the fall, and you grew in the fall what you were going to be able to harvest the following spring. So these were really, really critical holidays for them. And the ancient Israelites believed that when they behaved as good people and when they prayed properly to God, what they got was bountiful crops. And so these were very, very important holidays. This commemorates not only the harvest, but the most important thing that happened on this date in Jewish history and in the Hebrew calendar is that the Israelites were given the Torah, given the 10 Commandments. It's the day on which Moses walked up to the top of Mount Sinai and received the Torah from God. And it is, of course, one of the most, if not the most, critical event in Jewish history, along with 2 others. The first being creation, because if we'd never been created in the beginning, we wouldn't have gotten anything else that we have, including the Torah. And secondly, the redemption from Egypt, because if we had not been redeemed from slavery, we never would have made it to the foot of Mount Sinai to get the Torah. So I want to talk to you about a couple of things that you're probably really familiar with about this holiday, but you know, repetition and learning something again is never a bad thing, right? So we're going to learn again. Okay. The day on which we got the 10 Commandments was, in fact, one of the most important days in Jewish history, because it was at that time that God made, finally, this covenant with us that we were considered God's Am Segula, Am Segula. Now that's Hebrew, and what it really means is a treasured people. Now sometimes that has been translated as chosen people, but it's really not chosen people. And besides which, being chosen doesn't necessarily mean being any more special than anyone else. It means that we were chosen for a special mission. And the word Am Segula, which is the Hebrew that's actually in the Torah, means a treasured people. And why did God treasure the Israelites? Because we were recipients of the Torah. So it's kind of this circular argument. So what is our mission? What is the Jewish mission? Well, the Torah tells us that we are to be an or lagoyim, a light unto the nations. The reason that we received the Torah was to be the caretakers of it and the sharers of it. We are to share its lessons, its values, its morals with the world, with other people. And how do we do that? By behaving in the ways in which the Torah teaches us to behave, as good people, as people with morals, as people with integrity, as people with values, as people who can be trusted, as people who don't rip other people off, as people who don't murder, as people who don't steal, as people who honor their parents, all of these different things. This is a blueprint for the kind of behavior that helps one to lead a moral, ethical, and good life. And it is our job to share that with the rest of the world. Now, we don't do that by proselytizing. In other words, we don't go out and try to encourage other people to convert to Judaism. Just by being a moral exemplar, in other words, being an example of how a human being is supposed to behave, that is how we go out into the world and teach others Torah. You don't actually have to sit down with a Torah scroll and study it. So, the holiday represents both the giving of the Ten Commandments, the giving of the Torah, as well as an agricultural holiday that involves a harvest. So let's talk about what's been happening for the last 6 weeks and what's going to happen for the next 9 days or the next week or so until we get to Shavuot, which is a week from tomorrow night, a week from Thursday night. Okay. Since the day after Passover, we have been involved in a process known as Sfirat HaOmer. Sfirat HaOmer, which means the counting of the Omer. And what is Omer? Shout it out if you know. I'm not going to hear you, but Katie will let me know that somebody answered. What is the Omer? The Omer is the barley harvest. And in the ancient land of Israel, and even still today, the barley harvest is collected from the second day of Passover, all the way for 7 weeks. 7 weeks is 49 days. And then on the 50th day, it's Shavuot. So there's 3 items in this picture. And first I'm going to talk about the barley. There's wheat in here too, but barley. So every day we count what day of the Omer it is. And there's a very interesting little formula where every night at sundown, you count that day. So you would say, today is the first day of the Omer. And then the second day, you would say, today is the second day of the Omer. And then you would get to, let's say, the 26th day, And 26 is how many weeks? 3 weeks, right? Right? 3 weeks is 21 days. And then we have 5 more days. So it's 3 weeks and 5 days. And you would count and you would say, today is the 26th day of the Omer, making 3 weeks and 5 days of the counting of the Omer. So it's very, very specific what day we're on. We have to keep track because we count the Omer for 49 days, and then, lo and behold, on day 50, it is Shavuos. So we better keep track. Now, what is happening during that time is that the barley harvest is being brought in. All the sheaves of barley are being harvested, and at the end of the barley harvest, we begin to harvest wheat. And the wheat will be harvested until Sukkot. So we have 7 weeks that we're counting off. And that 7 weeks represents the amount of time that it took us to get from Egypt to the foot of Mount Sinai. You know, it wasn't just a one-day journey. They didn't hop in their Cadillac Escalade and do the drive. They walked from Egypt to the foot of Mount Sinai in the Sinai Desert, and that trek took 7 weeks. So it's a very critical 7-week period of time from Passover to Shavuot. And sometimes this program that I do these shows on is backwards. So I don't know if I'm going this way or this way. But whatever way, they were walking from Egypt to the foot of Mount Sinai. And at the end of the 49 days, on the 50th day, they got the Torah. So during these 7 weeks, we do some pretty special things. For example, we count the Omer every night. That's number 1. Number 2, there's a special event that takes place on the 33rd day of the Omer. So 33 days is 4 weeks, right? 4 times 7 is 28. And 5 days of the Omer. 4 weeks and 5 days of the Omer is 33 days. You didn't realize you were going to get a math lesson this morning, right? Sorry about that. Anyway, so on the 33rd day of these 49 days, that is Lag BaOmer, and you've heard of Lag BaOmer. Some of you may say Lag BaOmer. It's Lag BaOmer. It is the 33rd day of counting the Omer, and on that day, we have celebrations. We have bonfires and cookouts, and it already passed, and of course we couldn't do it this year, but people have like picnic games, they shoot bows and arrows. It's a very special day in Jewish history because it is a day on which apparently 24,000 disciples of Rabbi Akiva had died from a plague. But on this particular day, on the 33rd day of the Omer, the plague ceased. And so there was a huge celebration. So the first 33 of the 49 days, we are in a period of semi-mourning. Mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, not mourning like the morning time, but mourning like when somebody dies. And we actually do some of the things that people do when they are in mourning. For example, men do not cut their hair and they don't shave. We don't have any weddings. We're not supposed to go to events where we listen to music. Now this is in, of course, traditional Judaism. So, but on the 33rd day of the Omer, all bets are off and celebrating can begin again. And it's a special day for little 3-year-old Orthodox boys because it's when they go to get their first haircut. It's called an upshirin, and it's a very special day because when they're 3, they're now allowed to get their haircut. They get their first little tzitzit, their first little, talit that has the fringes on it, and they begin their official study. So the 33rd day of the Omer is important. Now, I want to talk about what we read on Shavuot, okay? Each of these festivals has a special book of the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, that is read during that holiday. And on Shavuot, well, I'll tell you what the others are first. So everybody knows what we read on Purim, right? We read the Megillah of Esther. And the word Megillah in Hebrew means scroll, S-C-R-O-L-L. The Megillah simply means scroll. So when we say the Megillat Esther, we mean the scroll of Esther. But believe it or not, there are 4 other scrolls also in the Hebrew Bible. Esther is the only one that we still read in the actual form of a scroll, where we open it up like the Torah and read it that way. But there are 4 other, what we call Megillot, scrolls. One of them we read at Sukkot. That is called Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. One of them we read at Pesach, and that is called Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. One of them we read at Purim, and that is the Scroll of Esther. One of them we'll be reading this summer during Tisha B'Av as you call it, and that is Echa, or Lamentations. And the 5th one, which we're going to be reading during Shavuot, coming up next week, is the Scroll of Ruth, the Book of Ruth. Why the Book of Ruth? Why is that associated with Shavuot? Well, for a number of reasons, but primarily 2 really important reasons. The first is that Shavuot is the time of the giving of the 10 Commandments, the giving of the Torah. And the story of Ruth is a story of a woman who has 2 sons and 2 daughters-in-law. Both sons are married. And Ruth's husband dies. And then one of her sons dies, leaving his wife a widow. And then the other son dies, leaving his wife a widow. So we now have these 3 widows, Ruth and her 2 daughters-in-law. And one of the daughter-in-laws says, now that my husband is gone, I want to go back and live with my people. And Ruth gives her blessing, and she goes back to her tribe to live with her tribe. The other daughter-in-law, Ruth says to her, I want you to be able to go back and live with your people too. And the other daughter-in-law's name is Naomi, and she says, I got this backwards. I'm sorry. Naomi is the mother-in-law. And she says to her daughter-in-law, Ruth, I want you to go off and now live again with your tribe of people. And Ruth says, no. She says, wherever you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. So she was not an Israelite. So Naomi goes back to the land of Moab, which is her ancestral home, and Ruth goes with her. And Ruth takes on all the rituals and the beliefs of the Jewish people. And we often call her the first convert to Judaism because she was not an Israelite, she was not Jewish, but she took on the Jewish way of life when her husband died, and she followed Naomi back to her ancestral land, the land of Moab. So Ruth is a very critical woman in Jewish history. Now, not only is she important because she decides that she's going to take on all the practices and the God of the Israelites, but she also eventually, a few generations later, becomes the grandmother of King David. And we know how important King David was. So King David's grandmother was actually a convert to Judaism. So it's as if she accepted the Torah as well. And in fact, even nowadays, when somebody becomes a ger or a gioret, which is a male or a female convert to Judaism, we usually do a ceremony where they hold the Torah in front of an open ark, and they pledge that is now the book and the words which they will follow as their own tradition. So accepting the Torah, which was given on that day, is critical. So that's one reason why we read the book of Ruth. The other reason has to do with when the story of Ruth takes place. And it takes place during the harvest, during the wheat harvest, which comes after the barley harvest. So agriculturally, there's a connection as well. Is that confusing? I hope everybody got it. And if you didn't, make sure you ask Katie to send me the questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so now we have already talked about two of the symbols on here, right? We've talked about the harvest of the barley and the wheat. Whoops. And behind that is a Torah scroll. And something else related to the Torah also happens on Shavuot. In more progressive Jewish settings, such as Reform and conservative congregations, it is usually on the holiday of Shavuot, or right around then, that the confirmation service takes place. And confirmation, some of you were probably confirmed. I was confirmed. Usually happens around the sophomore or junior year of high school. Some congregations are moving it now to the senior year of high school so that they can keep the kids engaged for a longer period of time. But on that day, unlike the bar or bat mitzvah when you're 13 years old and you take on the mitzvot that you are supposed to do as an adult, there is a confirmation ceremony during which the young person confirms in the presence of their Jewish community that they accept Judaism as their faith tradition. They are old enough to make that conscious decision. And usually the confirmation service is led by the young people. Sometimes it's done on a Friday evening, sometimes it's done on a Shabbat morning, sometimes it's done as a separate service during the week or on a Sunday, and hopefully it's done on Shavuot, because then it has real meaning. But these services are quite beautiful. Usually each of the young people gets a private blessing from the rabbi or from the cantor or from both. It's a big deal. It's a big occasion. Usually the kids are dressed in white robes. They get flowers. The holiday is known by another day as well, which is the festival of the first fruits, because it's the first time that there are the kinds of fruits and plants available that were brought to the high priest in the ancient temple in Jerusalem. And so it's customary to decorate the ark with beautiful flowers and greens and ferns. And if any of you came to my Shavuot services over the last 2 years, you know that that's something I love to do. I love to decorate the ark, and each one of you got a flower. This year, I am so sorry. I wish that we could do that, but we can't. So God willing, next year we'll be doing Shavuot and all the holidays exactly like they're supposed to be done, and you will get flowers and baby's breath and fern and everything else. Unless, of course, you're allergic, and then I won't give it to you. But I haven't found anybody allergic yet, and everybody loves to get the flowers. Okay, so confirmation often happens on Shavuot because it is a way for a young person, when they've really reached a point where they are close to adulthood, 16, 17, 18 years old, to affirm and confirm their belief in Judaism and their practice of Judaism. Often these kids will give a little sermon. It's a beautiful service. They're given a gift. And so I was confirmed when I was almost 16, when I was in high school, and or probably was 16 because my birthday is in early June and Shavuot is in early June. So I had probably just turned 16. And then, of course, I have been the rabbi for many confirmation classes, where I've been able to lead these kids through a pretty intensive couple of years, following their bar bat mitzvah of more adult type learning, and then preparing them for this service. So I'm sure many of you have been to confirmations, if not had your own. Many of you have been to your children's or your grandchildren's, or maybe even a great-grandchild's, if you have great-grandchildren who are old enough. God willing, we will all have great-grandchildren where we can celebrate many of these life cycle events. So, finally, I want to talk about the third part of the picture. So we talked about the barley and the wheat. We talked about the Torah, the giving of the Torah, the book of Ruth, and confirmation. And now let's talk about this. Cheesecake. Cheesecake. It could be strawberry, it could be blueberry, it could be plain, it could be a lot of different kinds of cheesecake. It is customary on Shavuot, on Erev Shavuot, and on the first day to eat dairy. Now, why do we eat dairy? Especially when so many Jews are lactose intolerant. We tend to have this love of dairy. So on Shavuot, we eat dairy for two different reasons. At least rabbinically, that is what we are taught and what we are told. It is believed that up until a certain time in history, Jews were actually vegetarian and didn't eat meat. And it wasn't until after the flood and Noah's Ark that Noah was instructed to make a offering to the Lord of meat. But up until that time, and even after that time, the predominant diet, well, certainly the diet while the Israelites were traveling through the desert, was manna. So it wasn't meat. But we eat these dairy products for two reasons. One is, if you look at the Torah and you look at the parchment, what color is the parchment? Well, it's kind of off-white, but we would call it white. So eating dairy foods, eating light-colored foods, is a reminder of a taste of Torah, that it is light-colored, okay? And so we eat things like blintzes, blintz souffle, noodle kugel with ricotta cheese, cheesecake, and on Friday of next week, no, Saturday of next week, not this coming Saturday, but a week from Saturday. I may have my days messed up. You're going to have, yes, Friday, you're going to have some nice dairy meals. We also eat a meat meal. And so, it's customary to have meat meals as well. But dairy is very important. And in fact, the night before Shavuot, so this coming Thursday night, it is customary to do something known as Tikkun Le'el Shavuot. We stay up studying all night long, eating dairy foods, and waiting for the next morning when we were given the Torah. Because it is said that the Israelites were so excited about receiving the Torah that they couldn't sleep all night. You know how it is when something exciting is going to happen. You know how it was when your kids were little, right before Hanukkah, or right before a trip to Disney World, or right before you went away somewhere, or whatever the exciting occasion was. Nobody could sleep all night, right? And so, in order to emulate or mimic this not sleeping the night before we receive the Torah, we stay up all night and we study. And we eat dairy foods, and it's customary to read and study certain types of things, one of which is something called the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the 613 commandments as Maimonides enumerated them. And then after each part, there's a little study by a minion. Nowadays, many congregations will do a late night study program. And I bet most of them are being done either on Facebook or Zoom this year. And often they'll bring in speakers. So they'll have somebody talk at 10 o'clock and somebody talk at 10:30 at night, and then somebody talk at 11. And they may go until midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then everybody will go home and sleep. And the next morning come for Shavuot services. Probably a lot of them yawning and tired. But it's a wonderful celebration of this of the spring harvest, of the story of Ruth, our first convert to Judaism, of the giving of the Torah, of the fact that we are so fortunate to have plenty to eat, and God willing, the weather is great so that we have harvests in the spring and the summer and the fall, and an opportunity to reconfirm our commitment to Judaism and to the Jewish way of life. So, I hope you have learned a little bit about Shavuot. I hope that you will be more grateful for the food on our table. I hope that you will come and study Torah with me. I hope that you will enjoy the dairy foods, the special dairy foods that the kitchen is preparing for you for next Friday. And just to let you know what's coming up, this Thursday evening, this Friday evening, I'll be doing blessings at 4:45. Don't forget my other programs, Hi There with Rabbi Leah at 9:30 on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Next Thursday, May 28th, I will be doing special blessings at 4:45 p.m. before dinner for Shavuos. Friday morning, a Shavuos service at 10 o'clock. And then Saturday morning, our regular Shabbat service. So there's a lot coming up. I know that Katie and Carly and everybody else there, Cynthia and David, they'll all keep you on track, making sure that you are coming to all these different programs. In the meantime, I love you. I miss you all. and I will see you soon. Chag Sameach, happy Shavuos. Bye-bye.